So the IB gives you, in our mind, the gold standard curriculum, recognized around the world as one of the most rigorous academic programs, but also with a focus on sort of that global citizen piece.
In this video, you'll meet Struan Robertson, who's the head of school at the York School in Toronto, Ontario. And in this video, you'll hear him explain what makes the York School unique as an IB World School in Toronto. You'll also hear him talk about what benefits the IB program gives its graduates when they're looking for opportunities outside of school. So why don't you start by telling us 3 things you love about your job?
Well, leading in the middle of a pandemic's really enjoyable. No, I've been at the school for a couple of years. I think it's completely different than the experience I had prior to that. I think we've got great kids. It's, being JK to 12, you have the full, from the youngest to the oldest. We have a really amazing faculty and staff, many of whom have international experience similar to mine. So I think we bring that sort of global outlook to the school. And I think we're different, being a really urban school right in the heart of downtown Toronto. We really use Toronto as our outdoor classroom. So I think it's a very different school in that way.
Can you give an example as to how you integrate the school within the city?
Sure. I think the best example is our grade 9 program. It's called our ICE program, which stands for the Integrated Canadian Experience. And the way we have their schedule set up is they spend every other day in the building and every other day in Toronto. So going on hands-on experiences all over the city, from Toronto Island to community housing projects to regular sort of field trips, but really they get very, very deeply involved in the city. They use, we're right on the subway line on Yonge Street. So that's sort of the urban experience that we use. And we really go by our motto, experience teaches. So we want that hands-on learning experience, but they're out of the building every other day in some place in the city, which I think is really neat.
And because it's so accessible, for those who are watching, who are aware of Toronto, it's right on a main artery in the city on Yonge Street. So where are families coming to you from? Is there a geographic area of the city or even further out?
Yeah, I would say probably most of our families are within 5 to 7 kilometers of the school, but certainly being right on the main Yonge Street subway station, we're an equal walk from both St. Clair and Summerhill. So we draw from, the east side of the city, the west side of the city, and north. So there's a big spread of kids. I would say our younger students typically come from closer because obviously they're not on the subway, but most of our senior school kids who aren't walking or biking to school, I would say are probably taking the subway. So we draw from a big catchment area.
And earlier in your answer, you talked about the global experience that you bring to the school and the staff does as well. So can you explain why that is unique to the York School and how it helps you build the kind of curriculum, school life, culture that you would like to envision for the school?
Sure. I think being an IB World School, that's a big part of what attracts our faculty to come from wherever they've been in an IB school and look for another IB school if they're looking to move to Toronto or Ontario or Canada. So the IB gives you, in our mind, the gold standard curriculum, recognized around the world as one of the most rigorous academic programs, but also with a focus on sort of that global citizen piece, service, all those different pieces. So I think in such a global world, we're very progressive in terms of our technology. So with the contacts that many of us have had around the world, we're able to connect our own kids abroad. I think also the makeup of our student and family population has been very international. And again, international families are familiar with the IB. So if they've been, moved to Toronto for a job, that's sort of one of the first things they look for when they're looking for an independent school. So I think it goes both ways. It connects us with the world, but it also brings the world to us.
And Toronto is lucky to have several IB options for families who are looking for that education for their children. So what would you say the York School does differently, or what makes it unique in the options that families have in terms of IB educations?
Yeah, I think the simplest answer, Carly, is we're co-ed. So we look just to the north of us, and there's an independent boys' school that's IB, and just to the south of us is an independent girls' school. So we're the co-ed option right in the heart of the city, and I think that's the simplest way of how do we differentiate ourselves? That's how. So the gold standard curriculum with a really good, the world is co-ed. So
right. And how would you describe the culture at the York School? Do you have values that you like to lead with in your day-to-day activities, whether inside the classroom or outside the classroom?
Yeah, I mean, I have three things that I talk about with our staff and with our students and with our parents. We make learning-focused decisions. So when we're looking at change or improving the school, the guiding question is always, how will this improve student learning? The second thing I often talk about is that I lead through relationships, just as I expect our teachers to teach through relationships. I think that's a huge advantage of an independent school, is smaller class sizes. We expect our teachers to get to know our kids really, really well, create that safe, nurturing environment, get to know our parents really, really well, and ensure that in a non-pandemic time, they're very much in the school daily, part of the learning that's happening. And third, building on what I just said, family comes first. So for our students and parents, we want them to be partners. We know that kids' academic success increases when parents are involved in their education. And we know that, outside of the classroom, having our teachers and staff coaching or directing or debating or doing service trips or co-curriculars, anything like that, with the kids or with the kids and the parents, it makes those relationships that much stronger. So that's sort of how I like to lead, and I think it feeds an inclusive culture, hopefully a culture of fun, and a culture of relationships, which I think really, brings that to the forefront.
Yeah, relationships are key in ensuring that students in this kinds of setting are doing their best. So how does the York School approach maintaining those relationships, and what are the lines of communication that you have in place to make sure that even in times of digital communication, those relationships are maintained?
All communication hinges on trust. So I start my day standing at the front door every day, whether it's at our middle school, senior school campus, which is just south of St. Clair, or at our junior school campus, which is just north. So it starts with being visible and establishing those relationships with the students and with their parents, so that you build that trust. And then I think it revolves around consistency and having consistent messages. I think, looking ahead to this year, which will be super unique, communication will never be as important as it is. We've seen that over the summer, managing expectations, helping people know what to expect and what's coming in what will be a very different year. So I think you want consistency, you want a face behind the message so that people know who you are, and so the relationships feeds into the communication.
How does the York School approach repairing a relationship with a parent, or addressing a miscommunication or a conflict that arises?
Hopefully, using the relationship. I mean, we know emails can sometimes be misinterpreted. So just like I'm very visible within the school, I don't ever pick up the phone. I'll go up to someone's office or classroom and chat. So I hope it's picking up the phone or setting up a face-to-face so that any kinds of disagreements or misunderstandings can be rectified immediately. Nothing's worse than putting things off and allowing tension or anxiety, whatever the issue is, to build up. So we really encourage our teachers to reach out not only when there are issues, but parents love nothing more than getting a phone call or an email just because it's been a great day. So we call them sunshine calls. And you build up your trust and you build up a relationship when you're not only calling home to report the things that haven't gone according to plan, but when you're also sharing with parents a great day as well.
Mm-hmm. And is there an expectation of how involved do you like your families to be in school life or in the activities of the York School?
Sure. I think it depends on age and stage of the kids. In our junior school, which is JK to 5, we have an incredibly invested parent community. Again, during normal times, parents are in the school daily, whether it's helping out, dropping off their kids, volunteering in our library, chaperoning field trips, you name it. And I think as you get your kids are older, probably in many ways they don't want mom and dad on campus as much, but certainly we encourage them to get involved. Same thing, chaperoning field trips, cheering on their kids, whether it's at a debate championship or for the school play or on a basketball team, or you name it. So it's very, very encouraged. I think we've got a really strong parent community. Parents feel really invested in the school. It just depends, and I think this year will be super different, but that's going to force us to find new ways to connect with parents and make sure that while they can't be on campus this year, they still feel very involved. So we're going to have to be even more creative this year.
And when you're thinking about the York School student, is there a student that wouldn't excel at the school or just wouldn't be the right fit?
It probably depends on the age, and certainly, for younger students, I think it's a great fit. It's a nice small community. We only have 2 classes at every grade level. So kids get to know each other very well. So it's a small school, and I think kids thrive when they know their entire class and they have lots of friends, and they're having play dates on the weekend. I think what we've seen is, as the kids get into the senior school, the rigor of the IB is not always for some kids. And as a school, we really work with families to help them identify that in the middle school. And it doesn't happen often, but there are some kids that are not ready for that really high academic rigor. And I think that's where the relationship or the partnership between home and school needs to be trusting. It needs to be clear, and it needs to look out well ahead to help families know that if this isn't a good fit and your child's not going to thrive under that high academic rigor, to help them find an alternative choice where their kids will thrive. So I don't think every school is for every child. And I think that we see that maybe more in the senior school than in the junior and the middle school.
And in general, is that the trajectory you see in your students, that they start in the junior school and then continue through the middle school, through the senior school, and beyond that?
We do. We call our kids that have been with us from JK to 12 are called Yorkies. And at graduation, it is a real badge of honor to be called out as a Yorkie, which means you've spent your entire school career with us. So that is, yeah, something that kids, again, it depends on families, whether if they're an international family, it's not often that they'd be with us for that long, but it certainly is a badge of honor to be a Yorkie.
And is there a typical trajectory after graduation that you see your students going on?
I mean, I think the simplest answer is, 100% university acceptance. Most of our kids go straight into school. We have post-secondary, obviously, some students choose to take a gap year, which we fully encourage. But, graduating with the IB diploma opens up an awful lot of doors for our kids, both to the top schools in Canada, south of the border, and around the world. Our IB scores are well above the world average annually. So our kids get an awful lot of choices. And we're very proud where they go, some of the top schools around the world. So it definitely, if you can, when you've achieved the IB diploma, it is really an incredible achievement. So that opens doors.
The academic focus of the York School, as you just say, it has results afterwards. What is your approach to socialization and culture and developing that part of the student as well?
Sure. I think like all of our schools, we want to develop well-rounded kids. So having, a rigorous athletic program, lots of co-curriculars. I think one of our programs of distinction is our debating program. We send kids every year to regionals, provincials, nationals, and world championships in debating. Last year, our co-head student attended the World Debating Championships in South Africa. This year, we had two students go to Cambridge in England to attend the World Debating Championships there, and we had a student who was scheduled to go to Beijing in March, and obviously that got cut short. I think service is also a huge part of the IB approach. We have big trips during March break. We have had I think it's more than 20 years since our school had a relationship in developing a Global Pathways School in India. So we have a very tight relationship with that school where we send probably 20 to 30 kids every March break over to India. And this year we were supposed to host 4 of the teachers from India at our school to again help them with some of the more North American or Western ways of teaching. So there's a really close relationship there with the Global Pathways School in India. But I think, we want well-rounded kids, and part of the diploma program are the CAS hours, which is a diploma requirement, which goes well above and beyond the Ontario Secondary School Diploma requirement for community service hours. So we want well-rounded kids.
Right. In your experience, is there a reason that certain families come to the York School for the junior school specifically, or come later for the middle school years, or come later for the senior schools, or what is there a shared sense of purpose for each age bracket in the York School experience?
I think first and foremost, being an IB World School, so having the primary years program, the middle years program, and then the diploma program, I think, there are parents or families that are looking for an IB World School. I think, to break that up into our junior school, it's co-ed and it starts at JK. And I think that's very attractive for some families. I think it's also really small. And that nice, on-campus feeling. I think our ICE program, which I talked about earlier, is a grade 9 experience that's completely unique to the York School. It's a program of distinction for us. I think that attracts families to start in grade 9. Coming back to the barriers, can't remember how you worded your question, but the barriers to entry. Helping families many families will choose to spend that kind of money for the high school years only, if that's a limitation that they might face. And again, our campuses are unique. You have our junior school campus is JK to 5, just north. And then our middle, we call it the big school, is just south of Yonge and St. Clair. So that's 6 through 12, and has the gym and the turf and the facility. So I'm not sure if there's something that attracts, other than for different families, they know when it's right, or when their child might be ready for coming to the York School.
Do you think that there are misconceptions about independent schools in the city, or more broadly? And what would you say to people who had those misconceptions?
I immediately went to the accessibility. I think that's a huge challenge that many of the independent schools face, that it's only for people of a certain wealth. And certainly, our school has a financial aid program, which is available to parents that might need some support in sending a child to our school. And I think many parents don't ever even explore that, despite how we try to market it and make parents aware that there is help. I think for others, there is a real challenge with how do we attract people from broader communities in Toronto. Toronto's an incredibly multicultural community. We've had a summer of really looking at our own student makeup, our staff makeup, and really have devised some steps towards how do we change that and make it more reflective of the city that we're in, more reflective of having a more diverse student body. But yeah, I would say there are those stereotypes, and it's a constant challenge for us to get both teachers to apply to our school that never grew up knowing that independent schools exist, as well as students from bigger parts of Toronto to come to our school. So yeah, I would agree for sure.
And when you think about the York School in the next 5 or 10 years, what do you see it growing? How do you see it growing or innovating in? Is there something that you would like to achieve in the near future?
Just one thing. I think, we're a very tech-focused school. We've got, so I'd say we're very progressive. I think one of the unique things about the York School is our age. So being 50 years old, I like to look at it as we don't have the long legacy pieces, which makes change difficult. Change is sort of in the blood of our school, because we've gone from a very small school in a church basement to having these 2 beautiful campuses in the heart of downtown Toronto. So I think change is built into our pedigree as a school. I think the technology that we have throughout the school allowed us to pivot so quickly in March when everything shut down. I think where we have to go, and what we're really going to see this fall with kids coming back, having been away for so long, is around wellness. I think the mental wellness, the physical, the anxiety that we're going to see with kids, with parents, with students. So we have a whole wellness program. We did a lot of work last year with Mark Brackett out of Yale, who has an approach, not a program, but a whole approach to wellness that our school it has not adopted, but has I guess enacted. Carly would be the best word. We've got 2 social workers in our senior school and counselors in our other 2 schools. We've hired a school nurse this year. So I think just our approach to wellness is going to be more important now than ever. And I see that being a real focus of both time and resources over the next 5 years. And I think if we can help kids through failure, I think, failure is seen as such a negative word in education. And I think if we can flip that to failing forward, that in the nurturing, safe, supportive, small environment of our school, if we can teach our kids to fail forward now, when they go off to post-secondary, they'll hopefully have those mechanisms built in to be able to deal with it far better than what we've seen. So I think it's probably a short answer would be wellness.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any advice for parents who are in their school search right now?
Most often than not, come visit the school. So I'm not sure what the advice is in the middle of a pandemic where most people can't come visit our schools. But there's great schools out there, and it's all about fit. And 80 to 85% of our new families come from our existing families. So it's the best advertising or marketing that we can do is just having really happy families that love the uniqueness of our school, that go home and tell all of their friends about it. And then come to our campus and experience it and talk to the kids and talk to the faculty and talk to the other parents. And that's where you know if it's a good fit for your child.
And with your knowledge of the industry, of the options available, is there a red flag or something that for you would be sensitive to, that you would recommend a parent also being aware of, who may not know to think about that or watch for that?
Not off the top of my head. I think, most of our schools follow a similar format. I think parents should always take their time. I would say look around. Don't put all your eggs in one basket with one school. Visit as many schools as you can. Talk to other parents. And start early so that you're not rushed to meet a deadline. It's a big investment. And there's lots of good schools in our city, and it's just, what are you looking for? And I think in a normal year, being on campus, you'll know there's a good feeling. And often I think you get to a certain age where, and I don't know what the sweet spot is, you have to listen to your kid. And if your child can also go spend a day or however they can interact with the school, very often they kind of have a pretty good feeling of what also feels really good for them. So I probably listen to your children if at a certain age.